In progress.
Welcome, everybody. We're going to be working on the Unit 1 exercises here predominantly in this video, but we're going to do a little bit of talking about some of the patterns of instruction in the class, just to kind of get everybody into the mode of learning correctly. So a little bit of micro lecture, let's call it, added into this video. The first thing is we're on the first coding unit here, which is Unit 1. There is a lot of material here on the history of computing, talking about some of the fundamental aspects of working with the Python programming language. Whenever we have a unit of instruction like this, you guys will notice that I have a topic list at the top. And sometimes the topic list is embedded with links. In this particular topic listing, I have the topics listed separately from the links. But those are basically my reference materials, what I think of as kind of our textbook replacement. What I'm going to do here is I'm going to take us to the first link, and we're going to land on this website called W3 Schools. Now, I am doing this through the Chrome browser, so some ads are popping in, and I apologize for that. But generally speaking, when I usually bring in external websites with ads, I try to ad block or whatever and get that stuff out of there. But W3 Schools is a really important website because it's built predominantly for web developers, right? And you'll notice that on their top menu bar there, the first three languages they have is HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, which are the three primary languages of the web. But you'll also notice that Python is just a couple clicks behind that, as being obviously a very important coding languages for web developers, but it's also an important coding language for many people. What's really neat about this website is it's an excellent reference site, right? And what I always tell my students is when you learn about these types of topics, right, you learn one language and then you learn another and then you learn another, and every language has a nuance and a lot of things to learn. It is very overwhelming. And the first thing you have to put in your head is you are never, ever going to memorize this stuff, ever, right? Why? Because there's too much to memorize and it changes all the time, right? So what really you need is a different kind of strategy. And the strategy is to have a site like this one that has good quality information that can walk you through all the fundamental aspects of a language and how to accomplish a particular type of task or use a particular type of code. And what you need to have as a reference is a site like this so that when you need to look something up, realizing you're not going to memorize it all, that you know where to go find information that's good. And this is one of those websites. I'm not saying it's the best one, but probably amongst the best, if not the best, especially for the web technologies, but also for other important programming languages. And as you look across that menu bar here and start scrolling to the right, they have many, many topics and many, many languages, but most of the world's most important programming and coding languages are on that menu bar within view right now. So HTML, CSS, and JavaScript for web, SQL for databases, Python, Java, PHP for creating programs, and there's also C, C++, and C#. And then it gets into a bunch of other stuff as well, which are kind of extensions of the other languages. But it covers most of the world's major and popular languages and is a really excellent resource. Most of my lecture materials and topic links link back to this website. And when I do the lecture videos, usually what I do is I'll just come here and I'll go through the materials here and talk about them, and in some cases demonstrate right here on this website. So for example, they talk about Python as a language, what it can do. My expectation is from you guys that you guys absorb this material before you come to class, right? And then if you don't want to absorb it on your own, the other strategy is go into the unit, find the video posting, which is a little ways down in this unit, right? There's a video posting, and then you'll watch the lecture video that I create, and you absorb the material that way that talks about the stuff you're about to learn. What's fascinating about this approach, right, is it puts a lot of responsibility on you. You guys do have to try to absorb some of this stuff on your own, right? So a little bit of reading happening, but if you find the readings are a little bit overwhelming, you can watch my lecture videos where I usually step through the content incrementally and explain all the concepts. concepts and demonstrate how to apply them. And that's kind of where we're going here today. For every unit, I will have these links. So like the stuff I'm really trying to cover here is talking about what Python is, hello, basically, how you get started on coding, basic syntax. We're basically going to focus on the print command today. And it sounds like maybe not enough, but I assure you it's plenty. And we'll look at comments, right? I do have PowerPoints from our old textbook. And then I have our little computing history section here. And then finally, the actual lecture notes. It goes back a little bit and talks about pseudocode and flowcharting. We talk a little bit about file management, which I'm going to talk about here in a moment. A little history of Python, how to code, what tools you should use, right? And I expect you guys to absorb this stuff on your own, mind you. The basic syntax of a Python program, the print function, comments, how to do a screenshot and how to zip a file, and then all the resources that I used once again. Now, what I'm going to do here is I'm going to kind of hit these topics super quick. The emphasis is on quick. And then the deeper dives are on you to follow the links that I post here to absorb the materials on a deeper level if you need that. Some people will, right? Like you might not have ever absorbed this kind of material before, so deep dive on it and read up, right? If you feel like you know the stuff already, skip over it and just listen to my voice and say, okay, next, right? That's absolutely fine. You're not insulting me because I know I have different skill levels coming in. But one thing that we do find important, and I mentioned this during the Kahoot today too, is like when you're coding and you have a complicated problem that you're trying to code out, it helps a lot to pseudocode it or create a flowchart or both, right? And then come up with the basic steps for solving the problem before you sit down at a coding engine and try to code through and create the solution, right? Once again, it's easier to build a house with a blueprint than just to kind of haphazardly buy materials and try to slap them together, right? And that's coding without pseudocoding is kind of like that. Another thing that becomes very important is this concept of file management, because, and normally in the past I would never talk about this, but what I've discovered in modern times is whether you're on the Mac OS or the Windows OS, how most of us work is we go into a program. Let's just like use Microsoft Word as an example. You create something, you hit save, it went somewhere. I don't know where it went. Maybe it went to my documents folder. Maybe it's on my desktop. Maybe it's like God knows where. And then later we either go to like our search thing and look for like homework week 1, or we maybe go into our folder or open up the program that we used and it knows where it was. But you know what? That's okay for normal people. We're not normal people. We're computer geeks, right? We need to know where all our stuff is. So one of the first things that I recommend to people is whatever platform you're using, whether it's Windows, Mac, or some like weird Linux distro, figure out where your file management tool is. This is File Explorer in Windows 11. If I was on a Mac, I would use Finder. If I was on a Linux distro, whatever tool they have, usually it's called File Manager or something like that, right? And for most of us, when we store our files, we tend to put them in our documents folder, right? And that might be a good strategy for you. And I'm saying might. Ultimately, here's what I'm going to tell you. Where you guys store your files and how you store them is on you. But if you're organized, it really helps a lot. And what I normally recommend to people is that you maybe create a folder wherever you choose to store stuff called Gateway or School or something like that. And then maybe you create a folder for your Python class. And then maybe inside that folder, you create folders for each one of the units of instruction to store your work. And then later, when you're like, where's homework for week 2? I'm not sure. No, you know exactly where it is, which folder it's in because you've pre-created it. So one of your assignments here in this class is to create folders to store your work. I'll tell you up front, I think we have 10 or 11 units of instruction plus unit X. So you can create a unit X folder, a unit 1 folder, whatever, and you can just pre-build those. And then when you start saving your work, you just put the work inside there. One thing you guys will notice that I'm doing as I'm coding is I will create folders for the work I do. And, my preference actually is not to store my work locally on my computer. Right. Okay. So you guys would be like, well, why wouldn't you do that? Well, what if I step out of the classroom here? I have to run to the bathroom. There's nobody in the classroom. Somebody goes, hey, look, really nice gaming laptop, grabs it and runs. Well, then all my work just went with that person, right? Not really a great strategy, right? The nice thing is if you're on the Mac OS or the Windows OS since, I don't know, version 8 or 10 or whatever, OneDrive on the Windows platform and iCloud on the Mac platform automatically back up your document folder and your desktop folder if you allow it to. I personally choose not to, but that's a personal choice, right? So normally if you put stuff in the documents folder, it's also on your OneDrive, and meaning if somebody steals your laptop, you can sign back into your Microsoft account or your iCloud account or whatever, you can get your files back. What I choose to do is I run Google Drive and I run it memory resident on my system. So down here somewhere, one of these icons right there is Google Drive. And that piece of software is actually called Google Drive File Stream, right? That you can download and install. So you just follow these links here to do it. Just Google that, Google Drive File Stream, and you can install Google Drive. It runs resident in your system tray. And then when you go to your file manager, it'll create, at least on a Windows machine, it'll create a G drive, right? And then this G drive holds all the same files. So like if I go into my email, go to my Drive folder, and look at my drive, you guys will notice that the folders that appear here are the same folders that appear here. So I can go to the G drive on my local machine, and it's really my Google Drive out on Gateway servers. What's the advantage of this? If I save all my academic work on my G drive or Google Drive, once again, somebody could steal my computer, or the computer could crash, or whatever, all my work is safe. I can retrieve all of it, right? So for me, this would be a better way for you guys to work, is to use, you can use Google Drive, you can use OneDrive, you can use Dropbox. There's a bunch of different services like that. But most computing professionals, when they're storing their files these days, are preferring cloud storage just for the sake of, like, what if your gear goes down? If you're really good about doing your own backups and whatever, you run your own home cloud or whatever, hey, go for it. But for most of us, creating a folder in our documents folder, then syncing it up with OneDrive, or loading up the Google Drive software and then just storing stuff there. The beauty of it is the G drive here, none of these files actually reside on my computer, but I can interact with them as if they do. As long as I have an internet connection, I can get to all my work, right? And I used to not feel comfortable with that in the old days, but I feel very comfortable with it now. And in fact, what I end up doing is I use OneDrive and I use Google Drive and I use Dropbox and I use a few others all at the same time. And then coders also use this other platform called GitHub, but that's kind of like a later topic, really, for courses like this. We will talk about it later in the course. All right. So one of your assignments is to go ahead and create a folder where you're going to store your work, right? And if it's your documents folder, which it'll be for most of you guys, I'd recommend a folder called school or gateway, folder for each class, and then folders for each unit. Right? That's kind of the safe play. Right? So that's the file management piece. So please make sure that you guys do that type of thing. Be organized with your files. All right. High level intro to Python. Guido invented it. We talked about during the Kahoot. He did it to automate server tasks, and since then it's evolved into probably one of the most popular languages out there. Primary programming language for artificial intelligence, data science, and now becoming quickly a backend for websites. Very, very popular. For Python, what does it take to code in Python? Well, basically you have to have the libraries installed. You can get those directly from the python.org website if you wish. So you can go there, download the libraries, install them, and then find a coding tool. What we advise in this class is that you use the approach that we indicated, I think it's in Unit X, where you just go to the Anaconda distribution and download and install that, because it bundles in all the tools. Some of the better IDEs for coding in Python are this one called Thani. I've never used it, so I can't speak to it. VS Code, which I do like working in, and then PyCharm, which is a product from JetBrains. Um, but if you download the Anaconda version, it has built into it the two primary ones we're going to use in this course, which are the Spider IDE, Spider with a Y, and the Jupyter Notebook. I do like these tools both, at least for this course, because first of all, the Jupyter Notebook is the preeminent one for data science and AI work. In some ways, I like VSC better for the stuff that that does. But Spider is a really good entry-level tool because it's pretty lightweight. It gives you most of what good IDEs give you without being too taxing on your system. I know I will have people out there that are already fans of Visual Studio Code. So if you want to work in that environment, really all it takes is the Python libraries and a download of Visual Studio Code from the Microsoft website. It is free, right? I would prefer very strongly that you use Spider if you're brand new to coding, but if you feel adept enough to get Visual Studio Code to work for you, I can support you with it. You just have to make sure you have the right libraries attached. Right? So Spider will be our tool here. I'm going to go ahead and launch Spider on my system. And for most of you, the way that you're going to launch this, by the way, is usually you're going to launch the Anaconda Navigator. So if you did the Anaconda install, the Anaconda Navigator, I will tell you, I have a relatively fast system. It is very slow to load. So be patient with it because it's basically kind of like a browser-based software is a polite way to say it. So it takes a little while to kind of load up all its tools and libraries, but it does give you a touchstone to all the different Python things that are on your system, which is one of the reasons why data scientists like to use it. I will tell you that normally when I launch Spider, I don't do it this way. I skip the Anaconda screens. I go right to my start menu and just type SPY, Spider, and then go, right? But if it makes you feel more comfortable to launch it this way, and you see how long it takes a little while, and then it has this bad habit of hiding itself. So once it launches, you have to click the icon and bring it forward. Just a heads up. Spider is right here. I'm going to go ahead and launch it, right? So you can launch the product from there. And then if you have VSC installed or Jupyter Notebook installed, you can launch them all right from that interface. And that interface can stay up. Like once it's running, it's actually really fast. It's the loading that takes a little while. The other thing I'll tell you is whenever you're running a coding engine of any sort, and Spider, as it's coming up on the screen here, is a full-blown IDE. And what that means is it has a coding window, which is this window here on the left, right? So this big window is the coding window. The bottom right corner is the console window or the output window. And then the top right panel is kind of like our extra info screen for various tasks. And you'll see it has a bunch of tabs like help, variable explorer, debugger, profiler, plots, and files, right? So this can be used from time to time. I tend to ignore it most of the time, but there'll be a few circumstances where I do talk about it and use it, right? And the fact that all these things are combined together is why we call it an integrated development environment or IDE, right? Most IDEs have a similar format to them. Panels might be in different spots, whatever, that's pretty irrelevant. But this is the tool that we'll focus on at least as we get started. Generally speaking, we will write code in this window, we'll hit the play button, and the output will happen here. And the initial things we're going to do are just playing with the print command, so not really a big deal. If you guys remember last week, I wrote a really basic little Python program here, and I am zooming in on my panels. If you're curious how to do that, you in the coding window, it's Control plus or minus. Right, hold on the Control key plus or minus to make it bigger or smaller, or you can use the scroll wheel on your mouse, holding down the Control key, make it bigger or smaller. In the console window, only Control plus or minus makes it bigger or smaller. The scroll thing doesn't work. The console window is kind of interesting with Python, and I want to show you a couple of weird things with it. Python is what we call an interpreted language, meaning it executes commands on the fly. The commands that you type never, ever turn into an executable file like I would if I created like a C program or a C sharp program where it creates an exe file. Python doesn't work that way. Python just takes your instructions and runs them. And so, for example, add a command prompt like this inside here, because that's what this is. It's like a command line processor. You can type commands, and I'm going to zoom in a little bit. Like, for example, 2 plus 2, and press enter. And look, it gave me the correct answer. Or I can do goofy things like print, parentheses, whatever. One of my standard snarky things, right? I press enter, and look, it printed whatever. So in the console window, I can run Python commands and it will execute them directly. That's not normal, but you can do it. That's how Python operates. So when Python runs your program that comes from this window, really what it's doing is it's reading each line of code one by one, step by step, and executing whatever you put on the screen. So if I tell it to do this command here, which is print whatever, and I hit the run button, well, there it is. And it tells you here what it ran, where the file is located, what it's called, and all that. Okay, so that's kind of the general approach of this. If it doesn't run correctly, and I'm going to break my code, so I'm getting rid of the closing parentheses. You guys notice, as soon as I have an error, I get a big red mark in the sidebar, right? And then I also get an underline, and if I hover over it, hopefully long enough, okay, well, over in the sidebar, right? And notice it tells me what's wrong. It says, quote, open parenthesis was never closed. So it's trying to tell me what's wrong. Really what this is telling me is there's a syntax error, right? I'm not properly forming my code. The print command basically operates like this. Print all lowercase letters and a set of parentheses. Then whatever you put inside there is what it will try to put on the screen. So unit 1 is really about like figuring out how to get stuff on the screen, right? So what we're going to do next is we're going to start to plow through some of the exercises, but I do also want to make sure that we hit on some of the other topics, which we're going to hit as we kind of move forward here. So we'll talk about the basic syntax. We'll use the print function. We'll do comments. And then I'll talk about how to capture a screenshot and zip a file so you guys know how to turn in your homework, right? That's where we're going here today. We don't have a lot of time left, but believe it or not, we're going to squeeze it all in, right? So let's go down to the homework assignment. And what you'll notice here, whenever I list these programming exercises, you're like, oh, you say complete these programming exercises and you got a bunch of them and they're all numbered and like, where the heck are they? All right, so here's how you get to it. You click the title of the assignment. When you get to the, this alternate view of it, you'll notice that there's a document attached, right, where you can grab just a Word document. You can open that document, and then the document itself will list all the programming exercises. These do come from our previous textbook, right? But I like the exercises, so I'm using them. Thank you, old textbook. Right. And then you'll find the exercises that I indicate here, and you'll get a set of instructions, and then your job is to write the code that solves whatever it's asking for. And if I remember right here, and I frankly I don't, so we're going to do 1.1 and 1.2. So I'm going to look at 1.1, which says write a program that prints a greeting of your choice, perhaps in a language other than English. Okay, pretty simple, right? So if you guys know Spanish or Greek or German or whatever, you can do that, or you can just put some words on the screen. That's what we're doing here. All right, so that's all this exercise is about. A couple things though before we get started. Inside of Spider, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to close any open files I have. The moment I do that, Spider will create a new blank file and it throws in a bunch of stuff. All right, I'll be real frank. We don't need any of this stuff up here. You can delete it all if you wish. Right? You want to leave it there? No harm done. Right? We'll talk about both of those were comments, by the way, that we just deleted. Now, I'm a really big fan. Whenever I create a new computer file in any kind of program, step one of anything I do when I create a new file is to save it. First step, always. Why? Because otherwise you might forget to, right? And then it might go away. So that's the general why. So now we're leaning back on file management. I'm going to show you my technique for doing file management for a coding class like this. I put everything on my Google Drive, right? So I go to my Google Drive, I find my Python class, which I've taught many times over. I create a folder for this semester, right? You're putting yours in your Gateway Python Unit 1 folder. That's where you're putting your stuff. But I'm going to create one for this semester, which is 2026 spring. And then I'm inside that folder. I'm going to create another folder, and I'm going to call it Unit 1. My naming convention for folders is generally all lowercase. That's how I do it. You name them however you want, as long as it makes sense to you. And then all my work's going to go in there. Back in Spider, first step is to save my file. I go to the file menu, I do a save as, and I give it a name, right? Well, first I got to put it in the right spot. So let's go to my spot, which is on my Google Drive in my Python folder, and I created a spring 2026 unit 1 folder. So that's where it's going to go. Then I'm going to click in the file name, and I'm going to name it something that makes sense. Okay. For me, I'm doing a numbered exercise. So what I'm going to do, this is my convention, is I'm just going to name it EX for exercise. And I'm going to do 1_1 because I can't do a dot because then it thinks it's a file extension, right? So I do exercise 1_1, I do 1_1. You want to call it something else, that's on you. Be really verbose with the title, that's okay. So I'm going to save that. And now you notice in the tab here, it is changed to that name. All right. So our first instruction is to use the print command, all lowercase, remember, a set of parentheses. Inside the parentheses, set of double quotes. Do you guys notice that I typed the opening parentheses and it closed it for me? And then I typed an opening double quote and it closed it for me. You guys picked that up? So that's one of the reasons why we use an IDE also. That feature is called IntelliSense or autocomplete. And in the old days, I used to fight it because I was not comfortable with, the coding engine completing my code for me. And now I'm like, well, let's do it. And why do you allow the IntelliSense to step in? Because I might forget to type the second double quote and then it won't work. And I'll demonstrate that. So what you're supposed to do as your first program, by the way, is this. You're supposed to go, hello world, with some exclamation points, right? That's the classic first program in any language. Notice, print all lowercase, opening, closing parentheses, a set of double quotes, and then you can hit your run button, and then there's your output. Yay, very exciting stuff. All right, you will do much more interesting stuff as we move forward, but you were successful here. If you can do this, great. If it didn't work, let's say, like, for example, you forgot that closing parenthesis, right? You get the underline, or you forgot the closing double quote. There's your underline again, right? And whenever you have a red underline, I just let you know, it's not going to run. Yeah, it's not going to run it up. You have a syntax error is what it's telling you. All right, so now that we successfully made this run, here's how you submit it as homework, right? First of all, you save the file, and then we're going to create a bunch of Python files. We're going to zip them all together. You're going to turn them all in. But you're also going to create a screenshot document. Now, you can use Google Drive for this, create a document, or my preference would be that you use Microsoft Word, but Google Drive does allow you to create documents in Word format. So the technique is basically the same, whether you're using Google Drive or you're using Microsoft Word. And what we do is we'll create a blank document in any platform. And then what I prefer you do is, like, I don't know, homework, or maybe like unit 1 exercises, give it a title. And then this is going to be exercise 1.1, maybe label it, right? You want to make bold, italic, whatever. And then I'm going to have you create screenshots. The screenshots will work as follows, right? I want a screenshot of your code, not the whole screen. I want you guys to listen to that really carefully. Don't screenshot the whole screen. Don't do like print screen, copy paste. I want you to be very selective about your screenshots. So I want a screenshot of the code, a screenshot of the output, and then I want a description if you feel compelled to provide it. And how things worked, basically. So let me demonstrate how to do that. If you're in Windows, the screenshot tool is called the snipping tool. There's more than one way to activate this, by the way, but I usually go to the start menu. I start typing snip, and it brings up this little panel, right? Then I get on the screen what I want to screenshot, which is on the screen already. I'll click the new button, changes to a crosshairs, and I come in here and I just screenshot the code. Notice I just grabbed the part I need, not everything, right? Then I hit the copy button or Control C. I go back to my document and I paste it in. Okay, very large, doesn't need to be that big. Generally, the goal of a screenshot should be that the text inside the screenshot should be about the same size as the text in the document, right? That means it's readable. If it's really tiny like this, very hard to read, right? But if the text inside there is about the same size as the document text, piece of cake. Then I'll click my mouse back in, press enter, and then I'll go back and now do a screenshot. So I'm going to bring up my snipping tool again. This time I'm going to do a screenshot of the output of the program running, which is basically this. I mean, you can grab all that if you wish, but really it's this part down here. And then once again, we'll copy that. We'll paste it into the document. And then I'm going to throw in some words. This was easy and fun. Or maybe you would say, oh my God, what a nightmare. It took me forever. Bold red text, yellow underlines or whatever. But that's the kind of thing that I'm looking for. So for every exercise, I want to see the code and I want to see the output, preferably as two separate screenshots. Some people will get crafty and like squeeze the window down and make it all good in one screenshot. But the moment the text starts getting smaller than the native text of the document, it's problematic for me, right? Now, the ideal format is, so if you're working in Google Drive doing this and like making a Google document, you would want to do it in this fashion. I'm just going to demonstrate it really quick so you guys can see this. So you can get to the Google Drive from here. So you go to like your email, bring up your Drive icon. You can create a new document, right? And then basically the procedures are the same. You just paste in your screenshot, right? But when you go to save it, right, I want you to download it as either Microsoft Word or PDF. Either one of those is fine. Because what will happen is when I do the grading, and I'm just telling you guys up front, very rarely will I look at your code. I will only look at your code if I suspect it doesn't work. How do I think it doesn't work? Well, there's red underlines. That's one clue. Or it's completely different than what I'm expecting, right? Normally what I do is I look at the screenshot documents and go through those and go, okay, here's the first exercise, here's the second exercise. And the other thing I will tell you is please put all the exercises in one document. So, here I would next do exercise 1.2, right? And then I would do the screenshots for that. And this has, I don't know how many exercises, you put them all in the same document. You guys feel what I'm saying, right? So I don't want 10 documents for 10 exercises. Also, when you're all done, you take all your code files and zip them together. I'll show you how to do that, but let's code a couple more things here first because we are running out of time super rapidly as normal. All right. The second exercise that we're working on, it says write a program that prints the sum of the first 10 positive integers. So for example, 1 plus 2 plus ... means in all the rest. So 1 plus 2 plus 3 plus 4 plus 5 plus 6 plus 7 plus 8 plus 9 plus 10. So that's going to be your print statement. So let's do that. Here comes Spider. Once again, I'm going back to Spider. Right, this exercise is done. You can close it if you wish, or if you want, you can just create a new program. You can click the new icon here, or you can go to File, New, do a Save As right away. Name it exercise 1_2. Hit save. You can get rid of the comments at the top here. We're not talking about those quite yet. And then I'm going to write my code, but it was a pretty clear directive, right? So I'm going to do the print command, open and close parentheses. I'll zoom in a little bit more. And then inside there, I'm going to say 1 + 2 + 3 + 4 + 5, 6 plus 7 plus 8 plus 9 plus 10. All right. Now, let's talk a little bit about the spacing inside of here. Does it matter if I put extra spaces inside here? It doesn't, right? So most of the time when I'm adding extra spaces in here, it's for the benefit of my own eyes, not for the benefit of the coding engine, right? So if I'm doing like a math equation, if I put extra spaces in, it's for my benefit. So if I run this command, you'll notice over here, it gives me the answer of 55. I do happen to know that's the correct answer, if you guys are wondering. But now that you're chuckling about that, but very seriously, when you do math in a computer program, you always need to verify it externally. Calculator, spreadsheet, or whatever. Sometimes some of the formulas that we'll find them online on Google or something. And Google will often have a little calculator built in that will tell you what the right answer is so you can cross-verify your work, right? Don't assume that the math that you put into the program is correct. Verify the math is correct, right? And don't be afraid of the math. The computer will do the calculations. You just have to verify it, right? So you don't have to be a mathlete. You just have to be really good at taking mathematical instructions and converting them into code. Now, just to demonstrate, if I did put double quotes around all this, it stops being math. We talked about this in Kahoot, and then it becomes text, and then it just outputs exactly what you see on the screen, including the spaces. Get rid of those double quotes. Control Z, by the way, is the undo. So I just did Control Z, right? When I run it without the double quotes, it just does the math. So this is exercise 2. Once again, you would repeat your screenshot, right? So you would do a new, you would grab the code, you would paste that into your document. And let's say, well, it's not, now I'm doing it on Google Drive, but whatever, right? There's your code. And then I would grab the output, and I'll just demonstrate that one more time, right? We'll snip. I got too many things open here, I think. And then I'll grab the output, which is basically that, hit the copy button, put it in my Google Doc, and then move on, right? Ideally, I'm labeling this and putting comments in. I'm trying to move a little quickly, though, if you guys aren't picking up on that. Right. The next exercise that we have, if I can find it, is exercise 1.6. So I'm going to go back to that document. 1.6 says, write a program that displays your name inside a box on the screen like this. And it's kind of, actually, I'm sorry, write a program that prints your name in large letters such as this. So like basically you're creating ASCII art. Now, Harry decided to use an asterisk, but if you want to use other symbols to do it, that's absolutely fine. Really what this is teaching you, if you guys aren't going to pick up on the fact, is that whatever you put into the print window exactly mimics what comes out on the screen. And this is really kind of learning that tactic. Now, if you start thinking about this as a problem, what you'll figure out quickly is that each line here, so I'm going to kind of highlight this, I don't know if I can. So this first line of asterisks is one print command, and then the second line of asterisks is a separate print command. So like you have to figure out, so hopefully you don't have like a name with like 24 letters or something like that. Some people do. My name is Christopher Alexander, et cetera, et cetera. I'm going to go with the nickname version of my name to do this one. So I'll create a new program. I'm going to do my save as. You guys see my routine forming here, right? Right. New program, save as, name it, exercise 1_6. I'm going to get rid of all the comment marks here at the top. Zooming in, and then I'm doing my print command, right? And then I want you to notice, like, all right, my name, I'm going to use the nickname version of my name, which is Ty, just 2 letters, T and Y. And then I'm looking at how Harry did his, right? So if you want an example, Harry decided to do his name over 5 lines. So 5 lines of text, so like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Right? So I'm going to mimic that. So that tells me right off the bat, I'm going to need 5 print commands with double quotes. So I'm going to, right, copy paste. You want to manually type it, hey, that's on you. Then I go inside here and I start to, I'll use asterisks. I'm going to do the letter T. I think I'm going to do 5 asterisks across the top. And then when I come down to the next line, the middle line of the T is going to be in position 3, right? And then that will continue. So really what I could have done is I could have just copy pasted that a couple of times. So I'm just going to, and you know what, let's output that so far to make sure it looks okay. Yeah, it kind of looks like a T. Maybe it should be wider. All right, I'll do 7 asterisks across the top. And this is how it'll go with you guys, right? And this is experimentation, folks. Like, yeah, that T looks, oh no, that T doesn't look good, right? Because I had them lined up in the middle before, but now I got to add extra space on these. So you guys see like the challenge here, right? But basically whatever you put on the one screen comes out on the other. Some of you will even get persnickety, and I tend to get like this a little bit. And I'd say, well, you know what? I don't like the way the T looks touching this stuff here. So I'm putting in a blank print statement, which you can do. So if I do a blank one, it just gives me a blank line. And see how the T moves down a little bit, looks a little better, right? And then I would think about how would I make my Y? Well, this gets a little more challenging, right? So I'm going to have to figure out, well, I don't want the asterisk there. I want it there. And you see how I'm handling just one part of the Y right now? Right? That looks pretty good. I'm not worried about the other part of the Y. I'll get there. But I'm just doing it incrementally so I don't mess myself up. And then this one will be like that. So I got the bottom part of the Y, like that. And then I would come back up here and try to figure out the upper part of the Y, which I'll probably do this. And you might think it looks horrible. And if you think you can do better than me and come up with some like miraculous way to spell your name with ASCII art, you go for it, right? But the whole point is to understand that whatever I put in that print statement, spaces included, blank print statements, it all ends up on the screen exactly the way you dictate. That's the point of this. 5 lines aren't enough. You need 10 lines to do it. Do 10 lines, right? Does it have to be asterisks? No. But this is exercise number 6. We are at 1:41 p.m. People in the classroom, people in Zoom, class is officially done. I am going to code through the rest of the exercises though before I leave here. So you're welcome to stay because I want to create the whole video. And then at the tail end of it, I will demonstrate how to zip everything, complete the screenshots, and turn it in. All right, so if you guys want to hang and watch, you're welcome to. If you need or want to go, you can. And you never need to ask permission to do those things, by the way. So this will, I'm going to keep the video rolling here. So we're going to move on to the next exercise. And the next exercise is exercise 1.9. So in exercise 1.9, we're asked to create this little house. Okay. And you'll notice that this one's got like plus marks, dashes, periods, right? All those things. And I'm counting here 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 lines. I'll probably put a blank one at the top. So I'm going to do 8 print statements on my next program. So you see how I'm not really pseudocoding it, but I'm thinking about it and talking about it in my head and making a plan, right? So even though I'm not pseudocoding, I'm still kind of doing it. So here's the new program. I'm going to do a save as. This is exercise 1_9. Getting rid of the comments at the top. And if it helps, if you don't want to type it, you want to come back here and just grab the blank print command. Hey, you go for it, right? Not a big deal. So pasting that in. I'm also realizing, oh, well, that first one, I just want a blank line. But for the next bunch of them, I think I said, how many lines was that? We lost count as like, I think I said 8, right? For the remainder of them, I am going to need double quotes. So then I'll just copy that I think 6 more times. I think that's right. Now, when I look at this next little ASCII art thing that we're making, the bottom of the house, or really the middle of the house, tells me how many total characters I need going across. So it's like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, right? And I'm tempted to start with the bottom, which is plus, minus, plus, minus, plus, minus, plus. You guys got that? Yeah, so I'm going to do that right here. So plus, minus, plus, minus, plus, minus, plus. Some of you will notice with this editor that the font that's inside the print command is slightly italicized. It's like on an angle a little bit. And yeah, Zoom raised my hand. I think that's kind of interesting by me just raising my hand. That does not reflect in the window though. So if I output this, you notice how it's straight up and down. It's not on an angle. Right? So I have people that have been concerned about that in the past. All right, so then when I do these other ones, well, here's a weird symbol. Here's a straight up and down line. Where do I find that on my keyboard? If you look right above your enter key, there's the backslash key. The straight up and down line, which is called a pipe, is the shift of the backslash key. So I'm going to start creating that here. And I think it starts with a pipe, and then a space, a pipe, a pipe. So pipe, space, pipe, space, pipe, space, pipe. You got that? And notice I'm working bottom up instead of top down. So bottom, or so pipe, space, pipe, space, pipe, space, pipe. Right? And that creates this line. And the next one's interesting. It's pipe, space, period, dash, period, space, pipe. Got that? But whatever your pattern is, right? Like, and I'm working bottom up. If you want to work, I think it's easier on this one because the bottom is the maximum width. So it's easier to keep track of things. Whatever your approach is, it doesn't really matter as long as you are achieving the correct results, right? There we go. And then I'm looking at, all right, then I have plus a bunch of dashes and a plus. So plus a bunch of dashes and a plus. And then I start doing the roof, which starts angling in with the pluses. And notice I'll do a space, plus, plus there. And you might find yourself having to redo it a couple of times until it's exactly right. You can tell I've done this enough times where I almost have it memorized because, you know, pretty much the same every semester. But there's my little house, folks. Yay. For silly as that is. No, you know, this is what we call ASCII art, like creating artwork with text characters. And there's actually a whole school of artists that do artwork with this, and some of it can be very impressive. But we're once again just really learning the parameters of the print command and practicing. So generally pretty easy. That was exercise 1.9. Our next exercise is 1.11. So let's go ahead and just make a new file. Save as. This is exercise 1_11. We'll read the instructions, and the instructions are: write a program that prints 3 items, such as the name of your 3 best friends or favorite movies on 3 separate lines. And I think, you know, I usually go with favorite movies because that's a pretty easy one to remember for me. But I am going to start talking about the comments now. And I want you guys to look at a couple of things that are going on the screen. Like every time I make a brand new program in Spider, you'll notice that there's this first line here. It says coding UTF-8. UTF-8 is a character set, by the way. We're not really too worried about that. But notice that the beginning of the line starts with a hash mark. And the hash mark is one of the indicators of a comment in Python. I'm just going to say this is a comment in Python. And you notice how, as I type it, it's all grayed out. So this is going to be non-executing code. So if I do like print parentheses here, it doesn't do, it's not going to do anything. If I run this program, nothing ends up on the screen because this is a comment. Another way to do a comment is by using 3 double quotes. Then you can type in between. And what's neat about this sort of a comment, this is a block comment. What do we use this for? Information, basically, right? Once again, I'll hit the run button. You'll notice nothing happens. So 2 ways to do comments. Hash mark in front of it, or triple quotes to start, triple double quotes. Type your stuff in, end it with triple double quotes. Now, interestingly, I can also do a print command. I'm just typing in some nonsense here. And if I want, I can add comments after the line with a hash mark, like this. This is also a comment. Right? So I'll hit the run command on that. You notice the ASDF comes up on the screen, but none of the other stuff. So what do we use comments for? Extra notes for ourselves, right? Instructions, demonstrations, whatever it takes. It's extra information. And I'll show you how I use them, but they are very helpful. Comments do not execute, but are very helpful to other programmers or yourself. So I'm just kind of pointing out that this is a comment. All right, so for 1-11, we're going to do our 3 favorite movies. So here, I'm going to start listing. All right, how about I do this? I do 1 blank print command because I like a blank line at the beginning, typically. Then I'll do another print command, open and close parentheses, open and close double quotes. And since I'm going to list a few different things here, right? You guys are like, well, that's more than 3. Yeah, it is more than 3. But I'm going to be kind of goofy here with my ASCII art, and I'm going to say my favorite movies. All right, and then I'll add a couple of dashes here. Got a little like underline, basically. And then I'm not necessarily saying these are my favorite movies, but these are the first ones that are coming to mind right now. You got Die Hard. How about Star Wars, Empire Strikes Back? Can't deny that's a good one. Right? Classic always. Empire Strikes, not back. Okay. There we go. And really, I should say episode 5, right? And then what else we got here? How about The Godfather? That's a good. Three of my favorite movies. Hit the run button, get the output, and there you go. And you can get fancier with the output. You want to list more stuff, that's okay. I just want to see you can get the stuff to the screen, play with the comments a little bit as you go. So that was exercise 11. One interesting thing is, and I'm going to make like an alteration here. Not that I really feel this. Well, actually, some people like part 2 better than part 1, right? That's where they take care of Fredo in the lake, right? Or is that part 3? I forget, whatever. But you notice how I made a change to the program. Do you guys notice up here in the tab, there's a little asterisk that appears next to the file name, which is indicative of the fact that it's not saved yet. So when I do Control S to save, or hit the save icon, notice how that goes away. But the moment I make another alteration here, the asterisk comes back. Interestingly, if you forget to save before you run, guess what happens? It saves it first and then runs it. That's good to know. Here's another little thing you should know about Spider. If I turn Spider off, forgot to save it, you won't lose your work. It'll still be saved. So Spider's automatic that way. A lot of coding engines do that. Okay, so that was exercise 11. Our next exercise is exercise 12, 14, and 15. Okay. All right, so let's do 12. 12 says, write a program that prints a poem of your choice. If you don't have a favorite poem, look up one of these. What I recommend is, maybe you're a poet, write me some poetry. Or, what I usually do is I usually lean on Beatles songs, so I'm going to say Beatles lyrics. All right, In My Life, that's fine. Let's do that. Oh. I just want line, but I'm just going to come in here and I get that for many of you, that's going to be a lot of print statements, but there are some strategies for this. And I'm going to show you what are the strategies. Notice how I just highlighted all of it? Yeah, because it's called copy paste. Be clever. I mean, this is just a text editor, folks, right? So I can take all those lines and just drop them in here. Yeah, they're going to flag all sorts of errors. But then what you'll do line by line is you're going to build print statements around these, like so. So that's kind of your task. So line by line all the way through. And so then I can put it up on the screen. I know it seems cumbersome, but as a way to make it happen. Yeah, you know what? That's a clever way to do it too. So what Ray is saying is he copied the first portion of the print statement, and then I think basically copied that and then just pasted a whole bunch of those in, and then you can type in the text. There's other clever ways to do this too. Yeah, right. Yeah. And this is really kind of on you how you prefer to work. It's really a matter of finding your own efficiencies, and then you can just go through and you clean this stuff up line by line. But my expectation is you're going to do that work. I'm not going to do it here for you. Right? I'm just showing you how to do it. The next exercise was to write a program that prints a 2-column list of your friends' birthdays. In the first column, print the names. In the second column, print their birthdays. So here's that program. New file, save as. This is going to be exercise 114. Zooming in. And let's do a blank print command to start. Then let's do another, this time with double quotes inside. And I know I'm going to be creating a list here. Oops. I'm going to copy this one with the double quotes, and I'm going to paste it a bunch of times. Oops, not there though. One command per line. That's another one of those Python conventions here. You can see I'm struggling with it, and you guys might too. I just grabbed it in a poor way. And I might put in a little header, just for example, friends, let's abbreviate it, friends B-Day. And then I'll do a little more ASCII art here if you wish. That's not obligatory, by the way. And then they can create a list of names. So I might say like Joe, and then I might say, I don't know, 523, and Sue's birthday is July 1st, right? But you get the general point here, right? You have a name, and then what you're trying to really do is line stuff up. Basically, is what we're trying to get you to figure out here. And then some of you might say, well, should it line up with the front part or the back part? Well, that's really very subjective. But there you go. Friends B days, maybe is what it should be called. But you see how it kind of forms two columns. So I'm just trying to get you guys to learn how to do that. We will learn that there's formatting commands that we can use that can control output and make it very organized. That comes in the next unit though, right? Right now we're just trying to get it on the screen. So if you run that, you get a nice looking little list. One more exercise to go through, folks. This is 115. And this one will require a little bit of research. So I'm not going to do the research for you, by the way, but it's very easy. You have Google. It's this like magical search engine out there that you can use to extract the information. And it says in the United States, there's no federal sales tax. Thank goodness, right? So every state may impose its own sales tax. And very interestingly, it is true that Alaska has no sales tax. I don't know if that's true still, but there are some states that don't have a sales tax. I was quite shocked. I went to Iowa this past fall to see a concert. And I went to, it wasn't true in restaurants, but it was, and I think we went to like, I don't know if it was an antique store, or maybe it was like a Goodwill or St. Vinny's or something like that. We bought stuff and the total bill was $25. And I'm like, there's no sales tax? And we're like, no, we don't charge sales tax. And it's like, what? I love this state. I'll buy all sorts of stuff, then you drive down to Chicago and you go buy like, I don't know, like a soda and it's like 10, 12% sales tax. And it's like crazy, right? So your point for this one, and I'm not going to demonstrate the completion of this one because it's basically going to be very similar to this, is to research the sales tax rate for, how many do we want here? For 5 states of your choice, and then make a little 2-column output of it. So list the state and list the sales tax rate. I think it's kind of interesting, and a lot of people don't know this, that the sales tax rate that we pay here in southeastern Wisconsin is not the same sales tax rate that you pay up north. The state of Wisconsin has one sales tax rate, and then counties impose their own as well. So like in southeastern Wisconsin, I think Racine, Kenosha, Milwaukee, Waukesha, Ozaki impose like county sales tax as well. Madison might impose one too, but the sales tax rate for the rest of the state is different. So that's the task. And all right, so let's say you got all your homework done, you got your screenshots done, right? Here's the procedure now for turning in the work. Right? So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to close this one. So let's say the screenshot document is complete, right? It's not, but let's just say it is, right? I got all my exercises in there, code, output, labels, my little narrative about how it went. It looks beautiful, right? I'm going to go ahead and save this document. I'm going to put that in the same, I'm not sure if this is locked up here or what. All right, it seems like it's kind of locked up. Okay. All right, so I'm going to save this to a location. I'm finding it a little frustrating that it's not letting me change it. All right, so I don't want to go to OneDrive. I want to put this on my Google Drive. So I will find my storage location. And of course, this is different for everybody. It's where you decide your stuff should go. And you guys saw my pattern, right? I know this is going in Unit 1. And notice, if I title the document well inside the document, the file name is pretty easy. Unit 1 exercises, right? So I'm just going to save it as that, right? So that'll be the one item I turn in as a document or a PDF. Remember, if you're on Google Drive, you would go to the file menu and download as a Word document or a PDF, either one. And then whatever that download is what you turn in. The other part of it is zipping your files, right? So inside my Unit 1 folder now, you see that I have all these code files, right? And the way that you do that is you highlight all the code files, and you can do what I just did, which is highlight the first one, go to the last one, hold down your Shift key and click. Or if you wish, you can drag a selection around all of them, highlight just the code files. You don't need to zip the document, by the way, right? And then I just do a simple right click, compress to, zip file, please don't turn in 7-zips and RARs and stuff like that. I want a zip because basically Brightspace handles those. It does not handle the other formats. All right, so zip. Notice how it gives me kind of a weird title. It's not really a great title, so I'm going to just call it Unit 1 Exercise Code Files, something like that. That's meaningful, right? So that's all the code files in the zip. Now it's time to turn in the work. So here, I'm going to switch into learner mode here, so it looks just the way it looks for you guys, right? And so now I have to go back to Unit 1 and scroll all the way down to where the assignment is, and I click on the assignment title to turn it in, right? And now I want to add those two files here. My favorite way to do it, real frankly, is I do this. I just take the exercise document, drag and drop, take the zip file, drag and drop. I might say a few words if I feel like it. You don't have to, I'm just telling you, right? But sometimes it's helpful. Like if you like, man, this was really difficult, or I learned a lot, or this is stupid, or whatever your comments are, put them there. And then when you're all done, you hit submit. And that's it, folks. That's how you turn in your homework as well. So we went through in this video, I want you to think we talked about a lot of stuff, right? We talked about the fundamentals of Python, how the course operates, how to work your IDE and launch it, how to save your files, where to save your files, how to name your files, how to zip your files, how to create the screenshot document, and how to complete the exercises. So even though the exercises were profoundly simple, it's all those other mechanical pieces that are important too. As we move forward into the next unit, and I'm just kind of putting this out there, your approach is going to be as follows. You're going to go into the Unit 2 folder, which is already available. You're going to look at the topics. And the one thing I will tell you about Unit 2 before you go into it, Unit 2 will stretch over 2 weeks. There's a lot of topics in here, so I split them in half. But it doesn't hurt to absorb this stuff first. What we'll focus on, for the first part of it is basically working with variables and strings, and then we'll get into mathematical operators and math during the second week, right? That's the basic split. So follow the links. These all take you to W3 Schools information. Read up. I do have some lecture notes here, but I prefer that you look at these lecture notes for all the topics. Notice how there's code examples with W3 Schools links for each one of these. I also have the lecture videos pre-recorded. For next week, you want to focus on part 1. For the following week, part 2. But if you want to do it all at once, hey, that's fine. The lecture videos are not super long. You guys notice that? The other thing that I do in those, lecture videos is I go in here and, for example, when I hit a topic, and I'm just grabbing one randomly here from W3 Schools, I read through the content, explain the concepts, and then W3 Schools has this little interface, which is very useful, which is they have what we call the Try It Yourself tool, in which they have a little on-screen coding environment that allows you to create code here. They always have some pre-created code, and you can tinker with that code, right? So I can type in a bunch of stuff here, and then I hit the run button, and it executes right in your browser. And what I like about this is I don't have to load up software. I can try the concept before I try to code it, and it's all right there on your screen. And if you come up with something here that works for the homework, you can copy paste it in. That's fine, right? But it's really a cool tool, and I'm just pointing it out to you. But that's our general approach, folks. And so next week when we get together and we Kahoot, we're going to Kahoot on the first part of the lecture materials, and then we'll code through the exercises. You will notice there's 2 sets of exercises here. So next week will be part 1. The following week will be part 2, and then we move on to Unit 3. All right. So this video will end here. A lot of stuff. Feel free to review it as much as you need to. And I know some of you might need to and some of you might not. And if you run into questions or concerns or have problems, just email me and I will help you. Have a wonderful week, everybody.